To millions of people around the world, he's known as Kane, the fearsome WWE pro wrestler with 8 world championships to his credit. Millions more have seen him in such films as See No Evil. But much more importantly, millions of people are coming to know Glenn Jacobs as a forceful, eloquent, and compelling spokesman on behalf of individual liberty, the free market, and peace. Yes, the man you know as Kane is not just a professional wrestling champion, he's a freedom fighter and an intellectual heavyweight in his own right, as Tennessee Lieutenant Governor Ron Ramsey has found out. Speaking on behalf of the tax-consuming class, Lieutenant Governor Ramsey has defended the so-called Marketplace Fairness Act, which would create a national internet sales tax mandate. This measure would override a 1992 Supreme Court decision forbidding states to force out-of-state retailers who sell goods online to pay state sales taxes. The internet tax mandate has passed the U.S. Senate and is likely to be taken up by the House of Representatives later this year. Ramsey is among those who are eager to see this new burden imposed on the economy. And in addition to misrepresenting the facts about the internet tax mandate, Ramsey denigrated as criminals residents of Tennessee who have avoided paying the Tennessee use tax, which could apply to online purchases. Since Mr. Jacobs and his family live in Jefferson City, Tennessee, he was not going to allow Ramsey's misrepresentation and his defamatory comments about Tennessee citizens to go unanswered. In a recent essay published by the Tennessee Liberty Alliance, of which he is a co-founder, Mr. Jacobs skillfully dismantled Ramsey's claims and challenged him to demonstrate that he was in compliance with the Tennessee use tax. Most importantly, Mr. Jacobs called out the lieutenant governor, challenging him to a public debate over these issues at his convenience. Lieutenant Governor Ramsey most likely wants no part of a debate with Glenn Jacobs, but it is our tremendous privilege to be joined by him today to talk about his challenge to Ramsey and other vitally important issues in the struggle for individual liberty. Mr. Jacobs, Lieutenant Governor Ramsey is a conservative Republican who has signed a pledge not to support new taxes. He claims that the so-called Marketplace Fairness Act wouldn't be a new tax. Is he correct?
It is a new tax. The reason that I say it is a new tax is because it's going to raise the tax burden on consumers. Currently, if you buy a product from an out-of-state vendor, you're supposed to pay what's called a use tax on that. For example, if I were to go to New Hampshire, which doesn't have sales tax, and I were to buy a product, but bring it back to Tennessee to consume it, I haven't paid sales tax on it in New Hampshire, I'm supposed to pay the state of Tennessee what's called a use tax. Most people don't pay use taxes because they're basically completely unaware that they even exist. What the Marketplace Fairness Act would do, it would require the vendors to collect sales taxes on behalf of the state. It would take the use tax and turn it into a sales tax. So in that way, it is a new tax. And it's also a new tax because, as I said, most people don't pay use tax. Most people are unaware that use taxes exist. I think it's going to be quite interesting for Lieutenant Governor Ramsey to explain to consumers in Tennessee that all of a sudden they're paying 9.44% in taxes in addition on their internet sales or their internet purchases than they were before. It is a new tax because the economic impact is that of a new tax.
Now, you point out that the new internet tax mandate would be severely regressive, hitting poor and middle-class families the hardest. Is this the case? Who is supporting this measure and why are they doing it?
Unfortunately, it's a lot of conservative Republicans that are supporting the measure. Of course, you're going to have Democrats as well, but what's rather saddening and disturbing about this is the fact that it is self-identified conservative Republicans that are pushing this tax. And really the reason that they're pushing it is that the states need money. Tennessee has the highest sales tax rate in the U.S. When you combine the base state sales tax with the average local sales taxes, it's about 9.44%. Well, the state wants money, and that's really what this is about. It's not about any other things that they've talked about as far as fairness or anything like that, or even states' rights that I've seen some politicians talk about. It's really just another way for the government to milk the consumer and the taxpayer.
Glenn, advocates of the national internet tax mandate insist that the existing patchwork system of online taxes is unfair. How do you respond to that complaint?
Gary, it's a little thing called federalism. The states are in charge of their state tax, sales tax rates. And what this does is it provides competition between the states so that one state their taxes don't become too onerous because people will move to another state. Now, what better competition could there be than the internet, which at this point has no sales taxes? So it's not that there is a patchwork of sales taxes that's completely unworkable and unfair. It's the fact that that actually protects our economic freedoms.
Now, Glenn, I want to get to the topic of the Lieutenant Governor, too, because that's a big story right now. But Art Laffer, the self-designated father of supply-side economics, recently published a Wall Street Journal column claiming that internet sales taxes will stimulate the economy. What was his argument to make that kind of a statement?
What Professor Laffer was saying is if the states are allowed to collect sales taxes on internet sales, that they could then lower their income tax rates. Unfortunately, that's never going to happen. I can't remember an incident in which the government has created a new tax in order to eliminate an existing tax. Maybe there are a couple. That's not the general trend. What the general trend is that they'll take this new tax and the revenue from this new tax and end up spending it, and it'll be a tax on top of a tax. Certainly, if they were to lower their income tax rates, that would be beneficial for economic productivity, and that would be something I would applaud. But they should do that first before talking about any new taxes or anything of the sort.
Now, Glenn, you've studied Austrian economics extensively, and you know much more about this subject than many, and you're very likely inspiring so many more of your fans to do their own homework and learn about these things. What prompted you your interest in economics, and what inspired you to become a scholar on the subject?
Well, basically, I didn't understand how the world works. And most people don't study Austrian economics in school. They study Keynesian economics. And Keynesian economics is really just models and numbers and how things would work in a laboratory. It's not how things work in the real world. The beauty of Austrian economics is it studies how things work in the real world. Economics is not a predictive science. Okay, you can't say that if we do this, this is going to happen. It's a prescriptive science. In other words, it describes what's going on. And of course, Keynesian economics, because it is more of it is a prescriptive science. That's great for politicians and also many academics and economists because they get to run the economy. Whereas Austrian economics says the economy runs itself, and all that we're trying to do is understand how the economy really works.
Glenn, you've never been shy about calling out corrupt or craven politicians, and you've recently published an open letter to South Carolina Senator Lindsey Graham. What did he do to earn a rebuke from you? This
was during Senator Rand Paul's drone filibuster, and Senator Graham tweeted that it was ridiculous to think that they would send a missile into a cafe to kill Americans, which was actually not what Senator Paul was saying. Senator Paul was saying that the fact that we were even discussing this, the fact that the president was not answering his questions about this particular issue was very dangerous. And I think it sort of illustrates a schism that's occurring in the Republican Party. On the one hand, you have the establishment people such as Lindsey Graham and John McCain, and on the other hand, you have the small government, the real small government wing of the Republican Party, which is, of course, Senator Paul and Senator Cruz, Ted Cruz.
Now, your business life requires that you travel quite a bit, and from your experience, how far has our society degenerated in the direction of becoming a police state? Has Obama become the judge, jury, and executioner using drones?
Well, I do travel a lot. I fly almost every week, often 2 or 3 times a week, and what we see at the airports with the TSA and the things that go on there, the body scanners, the fact that we're supposed to have Fourth Amendment rights in this country, and what that means is that if the government has to prove that it believes that you're going to do something. It has to have probable cause for a search and seizure. Just going to an airport and boarding a commercial airliner is not probable cause for searches and seizures, but we see that all over the place now. The old idea that people say, well, I don't have anything to hide, so I'm okay with that. Well, that's very dangerous, and that we all have things to hide. I mean, if you think about it, would you let strangers poke around in your bank accounts? Which is exactly what the government can do now under the Patriot Act. So it's unfortunate, but we have to some extent degenerated into a police state, into the fact that we're being watched, we're being surveilled, we're being told what to do at all times. Often we have to prove that we're innocent. The government doesn't have to prove that we're guilty. We have to prove that we're innocent. And those are all very dangerous things, and I would submit that they're also very un-American.
Glenn, you've recently basically called the Lieutenant Governor of Tennessee to the mat for a debate on the internet sales tax. Has he been responsive to your request?
No, he is not, but it's only been a couple days since I published my open letter to him. It has received some media coverage in Tennessee especially, and some of the mainstream newspapers have picked it up and have actually encouraged the Lieutenant Governor to debate me, pointing that I am a constituent, and since I travel so much, I do know something about taxes in all the various states. So maybe he will. I hope that he does, because I do think this is an important subject, and I also think that the public needs to see it discussed and debated in a public forum, and not just between politicians just essentially yelling at each other. This is a new tax, it's not a new tax, which is what they've been doing. So I would certainly encourage the Lieutenant Governor to take me up on my invitation.
Now, Glenn, you've enjoyed a long and very successful career in the field of sports entertainment. Are there many of your professional colleagues who share your views about economics and your passionate commitment to individual freedom?
Well, there are some, of course. I think you're going to find that in any cross-section of society. One thing is that we pay our own taxes. We're independent contractors. So it's very difficult for people to watch what the government does with our tax money, the waste that goes on, and to still write a check out 4 times a year, a quarterly checkout. One of the great victories for the income tax was the fact that it's now subject to withholding. In other words, if you're an employee you actually don't pay income taxes, it's withheld from your paycheck. So a lot of people aren't even aware of how much they really pay in income taxes. And then when they get a tax rebate, oh great, it's free money. Well, it's not free money, it's money that you paid into the system. So for that reason, like myself, that's one of the reasons that I got to where I am today, because I understand exactly how much I pay in taxes, and then I look at what I get back, and to say that I'm less than impressed is an understatement. So I think as a society, though, I think more and more people are starting to question this idea that the government can do anything. It has some sort of magical power to solve all of the problems. In fact, I think more and more people are coming to the conclusion that government is the problem.
Now, Glenn, I want to ask you this because I know you have millions of fans who are watching right now. What is one key point that you want them to take away from this interview and from your work?
For this particular subject, the Marketplace Fairness Act, the fact of the matter is that you're going to be paying additional taxes on your internet purchases, and you don't do that right now. So when these politicians say it's not a new tax, it is a new tax. When these politicians say, well, it's going to generate this much revenue, remember where that revenue is coming from. It's coming out of your pocket. So do you think that you are better at spending your own money, or do you think that the politicians are better at spending your money?